So today what we're going to get started with is you have some pencils and things that you need to work on organizing first. So in your pencil pouch or in your tins, you should have a blender stick, you should have a kneaded eraser, and you're also going to have probably 4 or 5 pencils. And with your pencils, organize them first so that you know what you're getting whenever you reach for your pencils. I'm going to start out with this batch of pencils. I have an H, a 2H, I have a 6H, I have a B, 2B, and a 4B. So these work like they are on a number line, and with the H and the B being in the middle, sometimes you get an HB, so that's conveniently in the middle. All right, so I'm going to work on shading the hand, or you know what, I'm going to shade fingers first. So with the fingers, what you need to think about is I always like to think of my hands whenever I'm shading or shading like these objects as if I'm on TV and it's black and white TV. So if it's on a black and white TV show, my hand is going to be a very, very light, but it's not going to be white. So you do have to shade these because it's not the white of the paper. Notice how much darker it is from the paper, but it's not going to be super, super dark either. Now, other things, whenever you're shading them, let's say you have a pencil in your project and you're needing to shade it green. You're going to shade this, if it's in black and white, it's going to be a lot darker than my hand. So when you kind of get stumped on what things should be shaded or how to shade it, kind of think of yourself in a black and white TV show. All right, to begin with, look at your hand and where the light source is hitting your hand. So I have my hand flat down here, so the light source is coming directly down on top of my hand. The shading is going to be mainly on the sides of my hands and in between and on my wrinkles. So these wrinkles and the sides of my hands where it's kind of moving away from the shading is going to be where I put my shading. And on this one, same thing. The hand is facing like this, holding the ball like this. And so on the sides of my hand here, on my sides, especially down at the bottom and around the sides, are going to be where I'm going to put my shading. So I'm choosing to shade with my hand a 2H to begin with. So I'm going to take my shading and I'm going to put some shading around the outside edges and anywhere, so I have a little bit of a fingernail there. I also have a wrinkle I'm going to put some shading on. When I'm shading this, do be clear that it is shading around the edges. It is not supposed to be a heavy, darker, thick black line. So I'm not asking you to go around and outline everything. I'm asking you to put some shading around the outside edges. A little darker, up close to the line, and then a little bit lighter. Now, this project, I really, really like the drawing. However, the pencil lines are on a little bit heavy in some places, so I would take these pencil lines and lighten this just some. Not erasing and getting rid of, however, just kind of lightening that area so it looks, it doesn't look like you have outlines around your hand. So I'm taking this and I'm shading the fingers and the sides, and I'm shading a little bit in the wrinkles. Then our next step is I want something that's really, really soft and nicely blended, so I'm going to use the blender stick. If your blender stick is kind of dirty, what you can do is take your kneaded eraser and kind of clean that up just a little bit, just like anything else. It's going to take some of that pencil lead off. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my blender stick and around the edges, there we go. Take this and it gets a little lighter on the edges here. Notice that I have the light source very evident where it's lighter along in here. As this changes, it's going to be lighter in the palm of my hand and darker on the underneath side. So I'm going to take that and do that same concept in here, making sure that some of these wrinkles get a little bit more shading attention on them. Then I'm going to take this and blend it a little bit more. So the blender stick does not work by itself. You can't just go out here and start shading all over the place. Next, what we're going to be looking at is, okay, so I have my finger that is shaded. now you can start thinking about these other objects that are on your paper. So if this is a paintbrush, I would think of my paintbrush, probably the handle is going to be pretty dark, so I want to choose a much darker pencil for that one. I'm going to choose a 2B to begin with. Same thing, the light source is going to be hitting the top of this, and then as it goes around to the sides, it's going to get a little darker. You know what? Maybe I'll shade the marker a little bit easier to see. So my 2B, I'm going to go same thing in here. I want to go on the edges of this once again and make sure that it is shaded first. It's going to be a darker value than my hand was. That finger I just shaded. So this one, I'm going to shade kind of all over. Make sure that you are changing the intensity of your pencil here. So some areas are lighter, some areas are darker. If it's all the same, it's called coloring. And we're not doing a coloring project, you're doing a shading project. So in this one, I have some lighter areas. Whenever the object is closer to the light, that's where the lighter areas are. And it gets darker as you get off on the sides here. So there's my edges. Now that looks kind of streaky. Looks pretty good, but it looks kind of streaky. So this is where your blender is going to be an excellent shading tool for you, and really kind of take that together. A blender stick can do a lot for you. Can't do everything, but it can do a lot. So learn how to use that, and once you do, you're really, really going to like it. So I have this. Notice that I have some value changes in here. It's darker, much more of a medium in here, and then darker on here because it's curving away from